Communicating with your spirit guides is actually very easy to do, but so many people go about it with the wrong approach. And therefore they miss what can be just very helpful, game-changing advice, guidance, confirmation from the other side. And just to be clear, what I mean by spirit guide, I don't necessarily claim to be able to say with certainty that you have X amount of spirits that are always watching over you. I use spirit guide in the context of this video as non-physical, helpful, divine guidance. And in my experience, at least I think, it seems to take on many different forms. Sometimes I have a good friend of mine, Derek, who passed away a long time ago. It oftentimes feels like he's guiding me. Also my brother-in-law, my grandparents oftentimes are there as well. I'll sometimes even pray to my higher self. In fact, that seems to be where most of my guidance comes from, my higher self or my oversoul or my soul, whatever, some kind of like extension of my true self that's still in spirit that I can directly communicate with. Sometimes I'll even have dreams of guidance from ayahuasca. It's a plant consciousness. My point is, I don't even know if any of these things are real or what they really are, but I do know that the information is extremely helpful. That's the main thing. Regardless of where it comes from, it can really make your life a lot easier and a lot smoother. In fact, it was about 20 years ago when I first became aware that this type of phenomenon existed and became receptive to receiving it. And where my life is now compared to then, it's like, a lot of times my former life feels like a past life because of just how influential and positive this guidance that I come to find has always been there, has been for me. And the purpose of this video is to show you how easy it is to receive this guidance. It's a lot easier than you might think. You just might be going about it the wrong way, which is what I did for the longest time. So in this video, what you're going to learn is why most people fail when it comes to trying to contact their divine guidance. And I bet if you're honest, you relate to some of these. I know I still do, but becoming aware of them can certainly help. Number two is what actually works, how simple it can be. What's the right attitude? What's the right technique? I'll share with you something that's proven to work not just for me, but for hundreds of my clients over the last 10 years. And finally, number three, which will also be very illuminating, is I'll share with you the many ways in which your spirit guides can communicate with you. And a lot of times what's blocking us isn't the first two things. It's that we are expecting something specific when it's right there in front of our face the whole time, but we're so insistent upon it coming in a certain way that we miss it completely. So the number one biggest pitfall I've seen is requesting assistance from your spirit team when you're in what I will say to be a frazzled state. When you're panicking, when you're freaking out. I need you guys now, right now, more than ever. Jesus, I can't believe this is happening to me. As dire as your situation might be, what you may have found is what I found is they don't respond to the frequency of panic and control and fear and anxiety and insistence. In fact, it's like the worst possible recipe for being an antenna for that type of information. And I get it. It can be very frustrating. I used to get frustrated because sometimes, and you may have found this too, when you're like that, you kind of do need some help. And you might think like, if not now, then when? This is like a time I actually need assistance and I'm getting absolutely nothing. Crickets, silence. I used to yell at my spirit guides sometimes. I would yell and I would complain, I would curse them out. One time, one of the ways I like to get guidance is with tarot cards. And I remember one time I was so pissed off that I ripped up and then threw my tarot cards. It was my favorite deck. Point is, I still didn't get anything. No, nothing came to me because it just doesn't work that way, I found. I can't be in a panicky state. So that's the first thing. If you're not getting guidance from your spirit guides, you got to chill out. You have to remember your power and not ask from a place of desperation, but from a place of awareness that you deserve their help. Another pitfall, and I kind of mentioned it, is expecting a response to come in a certain way. One of the things I do is I run QHHT past life regressions. I've done many of them. And what I always say is you don't have to see anything. It's kind of a visualization meditation sort of technique. So you are asked during to like see stuff, see a red bird, see a blue car, see the house in which you live, things like that. But some people, I learned pretty shortly on, some people just don't see anything. And made me realize that everybody has their own way of visualizing. Everybody has their own go-to psychic mode of communication. Some people do see stuff. Some of you watching, you might be able to close your eyes and see things. You might see auras in front of people. I sometimes see little orbs and little winks from the universe, you might say visually, but not all the time. That's not my go-to. Some people do hear stuff. Whoops, kind of funny. My wife, for example, she does hear things. She's sort of clairaudient at times. And she had it one time when she was driving a car when she was a teenager, and she was actually in the middle of kind of a car crash where somebody had like sideswiped her. And she heard a very loud voice from her grandmother that said, "Slam on the brakes." And she did. And just the way everything was going, she was able to stop like right before a telephone pole. In fact, the police officer who witnessed the whole thing said, "You're lucky you slammed on the brakes. You were about to smoke that telephone pole." You might not hear stuff. I don't often hear stuff. It doesn't mean you're not psychic. It just means this is not how your guides are going to probably likely communicate with you. Some people just know things. That's my go-to. It's like I'll sometimes intend for a response and then I'll just know the answer. It won't come from anything external. There'll be no actual physical representation of the message I have to decode. I just know it. And a lot of you are probably like that. But you question it. Well, how do I know? I was expecting the spirit guides to materialize before me and then tell me what to do. And all that's unneeded because you just know. Some people sense things, feel things. That's another one I do a lot as well. I will feel things. Just the other day, I was talking to a friend as an example. And we were trying to work out a problem in our business, this thing that we had scheduled that was stressing us out. And my friend had the idea to just cancel it. And when he said that, like mentally, that was to probably, just without giving too many details, it's something I would have probably been very resistant to because of just a lot of things I'm not going to get into. But I felt in my body, the moment he said that, I felt this relief. I felt like this burden of energy just literally leave my body. And I felt like, almost like I had the chills, like I felt choked up. It was like a physical, biological response to the words my friend said, but that was my own confirmation. That was my own way of receiving guidance from above, guidance from wherever, but it communicated to me through my own body, which you can understand why many people kind of invalidate. A lot of times people, they assume they don't receive guidance because it's not something they hear or see. But you might be a feeler, you might be a sensor, you might just be a knower as well. Another one is asking questions you don't need the answer to. In my experience, spirit guides, they don't really step in and intervene if it's not a pretty important question. It can't be just this mere curiosity, I found. So what I found is it really needs to be relevant, sincere, and genuinely something I need help with. And whenever that's the case, and I do so, ask from a fairly receptive place, there's always something. Whether it's immediate or later that day, or down the line even sometimes. But if it's a question I don't need answering, I won't get an answer. It's not because I'm not looked out for by my spirit guides. Same with you. It's not because they don't care. It's because they know our power. And in fact, I get this all the time as a coach, where people will ask me something, I can tell they either don't, it's not relevant to what they've expressed to be their main focus, or it's something they already know the answer to. And as much as they would like me to answer the question, oftentimes I won't. I'll say, "What do you think?" Or I'll say, "Is this something relevant to your focus right now?" It's not what they want to hear, but I know their power. So do the spirit guides. They know your power. They know what's relevant. They know what you need and what you don't need. Another one that maybe you don't do. This is something I did do back in the day. Ask the question in the wrong way. Now, what's the wrong way? Almost like failing to realize their relatively limited ability to communicate clearly to you. It is very rare that I receive an entire outline of steps from the spirit team about what to do. It's usually a vague feeling that I'm left to interpret, a knowing that I question. Sometimes I'll see this or that. So when you're asking very complex questions with like multiple answers, they're like, ask a better question. It's like the show Stranger Things. If you've seen Stranger Things, there's this place called the Upside Down World. It's like another alternate scary dimension. And these kids, they find they can like go there sometimes, you know, and they can communicate with like the physical plane, the normal reality through the lights. And when the kids go by the lights, they can like light it up, basically. So I remember there was a point where this woman, Joyce, her son was trapped in the upside down world, and she realized, oh, he can communicate to me through lights. And initially she was like, what can I do to help you? And he wouldn't respond because he can pretty much do yes or no answers. And then she was like, okay, are you safe? Blink once for yes, don't blink for no. He wasn't safe, unfortunately, no blinking, but that's the idea. That's kind of a silly example, but it's also true. It's, you have to really, I've learned like, even with like life, even with mentor figures, I've like hired coaches, hired people to like guide me in my business and in my life. And I found if I come to them with like 80 million questions and all this detailed stuff, they're like, I could tell it just, they don't even know where to begin. And I found it can benefit me to receive good answers. I have to ask good, thoughtful, mindful questions. So in this case with spirit guides, erring on the simpler side is better. So here finally, my friends, is what I have found to work, how to communicate with your spirit guides. One of them, the first and foremost, is to be sincere. Again, it can't be an intellectual curiosity. It can't be something you don't need to know. But I have found for me, every sincere prayer I've had, I have received something from. And the first time this happened to me, I was 18 years old and I was in rehab, drug rehab. In fact, it was the first time I ever even contemplated the idea of God. I didn't believe in God at the time. And I found myself in this very, very unspeakably low place in my life and in myself. I was detoxing. I felt helpless because I had been to rehab before and I still couldn't seem to kick the heroin. And I was actually yelling at the God at the time. I wasn't really being like polite, but it was sincere. And even though it kind of does break my first rule of being in a frazzled place, I think there was such a strong sincerity, at least at that time, to where I had a pretty miraculous divine encounter. The most miraculous I've had to date, where I actually did encounter an angel and all this other crazy shit that I won't get into right now. It's for another time. But nonetheless, like the main thing is like, I really did need help at that time. My life really was on the line there. And I allowed myself, I humbled myself to ask for help, even though it was in kind of a condescending way. That sincerity is what helped. And any other time in my life where I really, truly needed something, it's always there. But what I found is a lot of times we don't need the help we think. A lot of times we're a lot stronger than we have been led to believe. Another one, kind of touching on number one, but in a different way, is humility. Not like, oh God, please help me. I mean like humbling yourself to know that you can't do life on your own. As much as you might try, as much as you may have lost trust in people and maybe even life itself, and a lot of us do in our own way try to take on the world on our own. But that type of, even if that's justified because of your life experiences, that does seem to contradict the relationship with our divine counterparts. And a lot of times there's a lot of growth and a lot to receive when you can kind of humble yourself to ask for help. To say, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go, and I just need some help. It's a thing, I said, this kind of an interesting dynamic I've seen played out many times during an ayahuasca ceremony. There's a lot of times people are confronted with where they have to throw up, basically, but they don't want to disturb anybody. They don't want to be a burden to the group. They know if they start throwing up, the assistants are going to come and kind of help them. They don't want to bother them. They don't want to ask. They don't want any kind of help whatsoever. And the ayahuasca kind of gives them a belly full of something to throw up, and they can't help it. And even though it's uncomfortable for them initially, it's usually this beautiful thing where afterwards they'll say, you know what, I really resisted the purge, but I'm so thankful it came out because so-and-so came over and they said something to me that just touched me unspeakably. And it's like the ayahuasca is kind of a great teacher in herself, and she will sometimes put you in this position to break through that barrier and like know your worth, know that you deserve to ask for help when you really need it. And sometimes that is like music to your spirit guide's ears. Are waiting for that sincere humility. And the third one I found to be helpful but not always necessary is just an inner stillness. I don't mean like you have to be a monk and meditate for hours. I mean, if you're thinking too much, at least if I'm thinking too much, I tend to either not get any guidance whatsoever, even if I fit the first two nicely, the sincerity, the humility, etc., and it's something I genuinely need to know. Either I will get nothing, or it'll be very distorted in my head, where I'll get a little glimpse of something and then my mind will just sort of pick it to pieces with logic and reasoning and doubt and things like that. And a lot of times it's like you set the stage. Your guides are like literally on standby waiting for you to just declutter your brain a little bit so that it can come not from here, but from here, from your intuition, from your own psychic cue, or maybe the soft whispers of your clairaudient abilities. You need to quiet down the mind a little bit. It's hard because when you really need something, it's difficult to sit still, isn't it? But nonetheless, this is what I found to be a surefire recipe for pretty much guaranteed success with your spirit time helping you. Having a sincere question, humbling yourself to know that you do need help and it's okay, and to do your very best to quiet yourself to where you're a nice clear antenna. Now finally, and very importantly, even with all that done well, I find it's very easy still to mess up the whole process by expecting it to come in a certain way. Even if it came a certain way before, that doesn't mean it's going to come that same way this time. So many of us are like, well, I was clairaudient last time, so I'm going to put on headphones and quiet my mind, like Vic says, and I'm waiting to listen. Somebody comes in the door and they're like, they hand you a note with your answer, and you're like, no, I'm listening. You miss it. It's very dynamic. In fact, I had it one time as an example of this when I was intending for guidance, and I was kind of waiting for a synchronicity or something, waiting to hear something, waiting. Sometimes I'll get guidance through music where the lyrics are speaking to me. I was listening to songs, waiting, and then finally I just sort of gave up because it wasn't happening. And I felt this weird like hunch to turn my head, almost like something turned my head without my consent. It was more like, I was driving at the time. I was driving and my jolt in my head, and as I looked over, what did I see? A big truck driving by with like this, I forgot what it was, but there was like this phrase on the truck, very like unusual phrase. I wish I knew what it was, but it was exactly word for word like the most amazing advice. It was exactly what I needed to see or to hear or to understand. So the spirit guides probably thought, you know what, we could have this guy pull over and meditate for the next hour, or we can wait till he falls asleep and finally gets out of his own way, or we can just jolt his head to the left there and give him the result right then and there. But our minds are so powerful. If I was still insistent on it coming through a song, I would have been like, oh, I need to listen to music. I would have missed it. And here's the thing. Here's my honest confession. I don't have any proof that any of this is real. I can't say in good conscience that I know what I'm talking about here. I don't. I don't know if spirit guides are real. I don't know if past lives are real. I don't know if spirits who passed over can actually communicate with you. I don't know if these are just sort of, these are just extensions of my psyche. Like if you look at like Jungian psychology, it's like he's got a whole philosophy that would probably explain a lot of this in a kind of a different way. Regardless, whether it's just these archetypes in my unconscious that come forth and assume what seems to be the position of a spirit guide or grandmother or ayahuasca, or it really is them, I don't think it matters much. But I do know that human beings have the ability to receive guidance beyond the logical thinking, limited reasoning mind, and that guidance, when put into action, can absolutely transform and guide your life in an amazing way. I have never been led astray by this guidance I speak of here. It has always helped me, often in ways beyond what I was even expecting. But it doesn't come that often. That's what I found. It doesn't come that often. I don't do this every day, just so you know, like go through all this. I found the spirit team, whatever it is, seems to prefer a kind of as much of a hands-off approach as possible. And I believe it's because we're more powerful than we think. And while it does benefit us to humble ourselves, to ask for help, and to go through all the stuff I'm talking about here, at the end of the day, a lot of the times we already know what to do. And if we don't know what to do, we will when we need to know, because we are very powerful in it of ourselves. We are spirit. We are the guidance that we seek a lot of times through externals. Thank you so much for watching, my friend. By the way, I mentioned the past life regression. I actually run those on a semi-regular basis. I run online free past life regressions that you're welcome to attend. I'll leave a link down below if you want to check it out. I also do somatic release breath work and other types of free online ceremonies that just gather some of the followers here on YouTube, and I guide them through things that I've been taught, you know, breath work, QHHT. My wife, Patty, does her own stuff as well. So if you want to be a part of that, there's no obligation, but if you do, it's free. And I'll leave a link down below. Just click that and I'll send you the day and time and Zoom link to the next one. So with that said, you have an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.